Do you know what the biggest financial mistake is that people in their 20s make? Well, we brought on a wealth professional to talk about it. Let's get into it. Today, we're going to be diving into a topic of financial mistakes, and more importantly, the biggest one that you will likely make early in your working career. With us today, we have Cameron Ridgeway from Petersen Hastings. What would you say off the top of your head that's going to be?
Easily, it's not starting, right? The biggest mistake we see is not getting invested early, not starting the retirement savings, not, putting it off, delaying it, that it has this compounding effect over time that can really be detrimental, for depending on when you want to retire or not.
I was going to say, and most everybody that you work with decides they never want to retire. Working is their life goal. They don't ever want to take time to run away.
Yeah, everybody wants to work for their entire life. No, I can't even tell you any 20-year-old I've ever met with that says, I want to retire at 65. I want to retire at 67. Mm-hmm. It's everybody wants to retire in their 50s. Everyone wants to retire as soon as possible.
Of course. And my guess is they all have plans to make that sweet internet money by becoming content creator famous.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everybody's got a plan, got a scheme, but none of those plans seem to be actually planned out for a lot of people.
It's a lot of big ideas, and it hasn't quite been executed yet.
Which is weird because we do have some very solid evidence that starting investing early, especially with, say, a good job that you get out of high school, out of college, where an employer is providing investment opportunities to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of folks, they'll have access to a 401k plan, a 403b, whatever it is, a qualified retirement plan that's provided by their employer. And there are investment options out there for those that don't have that provided as a company benefit. There are other investment accounts to really start saving for retirement. So the opportunity is there right out of the gate, and it's just a matter of taking advantage of that opportunity. So
with some of those other options, what do people have if their employer does not provide a pension, a 401k, a 403b? What are some of the other options for people that want to be active about investing in their future?
Best place I would start is a Roth IRA, right? Roth IRAs can be available to anybody through any platform, whether it's Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Robinhood, whatever your custodial platform is, they'll offer a Roth IRA. And it's going to be the best place to start for those that are young in their careers, may not have that retirement benefit access quite yet.
Okay.
And it's going to be, a lot of the time, they're going to be within that income range to contribute to a Roth IRA. So it's a great way to put away extra money on a qualified retirement basis.
So for everybody out there that doesn't already know what it is, explain what the Roth IRA gives you, because I know there's IRAs and then there's Roth IRAs. What makes Roth so special?
So the big thing with Roth is it grows tax-free, and then come retirement, when you draw off the account, no taxes are due on that. So you're not taxed on what you put in, and you're not taxed on the growth. The big difference there between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA is a traditional IRA, it's a pre-tax contribution. So you're able to make a contribution, it's tax deductible in the current year. It'll grow tax deferred for you, but come retirement, when you start drawing on it, it's taxable as ordinary income, just like your paycheck would be. So you pay the taxes later. The Roth, why it's so special, is you've already paid those taxes. It's not a deductible contribution up front, so you're including it in your taxable income, and it grows tax-free. So no taxes ever due on that again.
Okay, so everybody out there that's heard pre and post-tax dollars, these are the two items that we're looking at.
Exactly. Those are your two tax buckets, if you look at it that way.
Okay, so I've paid my payroll taxes. I've now am looking at my bank account, and I realize I have the ability to contribute X amount of dollars into a Roth IRA, and I'm going to go ahead and dump like $40,000 in that every year, right? And that's going to be completely fine.
Not necessarily. So what, with a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, whatever it is on that IRA platform, you're going to have an annual contribution limit.
Okay.
So for 2026, you can put in $7,500 if you're under age 50. Which for those in their 20s, you know, that's your limit. If you're over age 50, you get an extra catch-up contribution that can be made. It's 1,100 extra. So 8,600 can go into that Roth IRA or that traditional IRA for 2026 for those folks.
And are we limited on how many of these that we can have? And it's just a cumulative thing. So I can't have like say 3 different Roth IRAs and therefore I get 3 $7,500 deposits. It's just across the board.
It's across the board. If you want to have 3, you can, but it's going to be that contribution limit is looked at for aggregating all of those account values. So from an ease of simplicity, just makes sense to have one though.
That makes a lot of sense. So if we don't have an employer that's providing us with a 401k, this is going to be a great way to start that savings early on. 7,500, 12 months, we're what, $1,000 some odd dollars, not even $1,000 a month, to get you to this maximum contribution to maximize your retirement savings right out of the gate.
Exactly. Yeah. For 2026, it's $625 is your number each month. That would be to max out that contribution. So, you know, if you're able to, it's not too big of a financial commitment just to hit that maximum amount each year. But that compounding over time, that growth is really important because it's going to continue to grow throughout your career, throughout, you know, working and waiting for retirement.
Yeah. And continued contributions are just going to add to that base that you're compounding that interest on as you go.
Exactly. Yes.
Now, this isn't exclusively to people who don't have access to a 401k, right? Even if you're working with an employer that has a 401k and you want to double down on your retirement savings, you can go and get yourself a Roth IRA, traditional IRA as well, and really dump all of your paycheck into there and get yourself a nice tent.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to double down, you know, the Roth IRA is looked at separately from any employer-sponsored plan. So if you have a 401k plan, you know, you have an ability to really put away a lot more Roth assets. You know, because if we're shifting gears, we're looking at the 401k plan side, you know, that's where really there's an added benefit to putting away more money even on that Roth basis, because a 401k is going to have, or 403b or whatever that qualified retirement account that you have access to, it's going to have a lot higher contribution limit.
Okay.
So for 2026, it's 24,500 that can go in before that after age 50 catch-up contribution. So
I was going to say more than triple.
More than triple, exactly. You could put in 3 years worth of your Roth contributions in 1 year, and you can do that every single year in the 401k plan.
And honestly, with the 401k plan, a lot of people out there may have heard one of our previous episodes about total employment packages where you could be getting an employer match on your donations to your 401k.
Yeah. It's another great advantage of that 401k plan, because if you have an employer match as one of your benefits, I mean, it's free money. And so you want to at least be putting in enough into your 401k plan to get that full match, because otherwise you're leaving that free money on the table for your retirement savings.
And I'm guessing all the 20-year-olds that you've talked with in your career have also said that they would much rather not be making an extra 3% every year just by contributing.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those, if you saw $100 on the sidewalk, would you pick it up or would you just keep walking past it?
I mean, I feel like picking it up is the right financial move.
It makes sense. You know, there's other factors at play there, but it's the same thing with your 401k. You know, if you see this free money that's sitting there available for you that your employer is saying, hey, do this, because there's a direct incentive from the employer side. They want to help you. They want to get you going and kickstart that retirement savings. You know, fully take advantage of that, because otherwise, you know, it's only going to affect your retirement and your balances later on in life.
So all of this seems like it is just very above board, very easy to make the, I'm going to go ahead and call it the correct choice to start your investing in these things right out of the gate. So why is it that there are so many people who don't?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of factors that go into it. Maybe they don't understand what the retirement savings are. You know, maybe early on in your 20s, maybe it's not a priority to you. You know, you're in your first job, you're making the most amount of money you've ever made in your life, and maybe it's exciting. Maybe lifestyle creep is coming in where you've got all this extra money now and you want to go buy a new GMC Sierra AT4 or get yourself a nice truck. And now all of a sudden you've got a massive car payment and you don't have that ability. There's that lifestyle aspect. Additionally, too, for those in their 20s, there's a lot of discouragement, I think, entering in for the first time where, they're seeing a workforce they're entering. They're making this money, but maybe it's harder to buy a house than it was in the past. Maybe all the content they're consuming across YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is, they're seeing people their age getting, beaten up online for making financial mistakes. And they're feeling like they don't have the confidence to make their correct financial choices. So they just defer it. They say, I'll catch up on this later. I'll figure this out later because I'm getting my feet under me right now. Which that's the big part where they're in a spot right now to make the best financial decision of their life. And it's just getting started, right? It doesn't need to be difficult. It doesn't need to be complex.
Yeah, you don't need to be putting in $625 a month if you're making $1,800 a month or at whatever your job is.
You're in a great spot to be just to get started. And that's the key component is you have to start early for that lifelong success that is going to occur.
So if I start early and I start, say, putting $100 a month into an investment account, or even contributing to my 401k, which I'm not even going to notice because it's going to take that percentage right off the top of my check, which I believe is the best way to invest, is to not know that you're doing it.
Oh, absolutely. It's out of sight, out of mind, right? And that's one of the things I always tell folks that are starting their career. It's so much easier to start higher than it is lower, right? Because it's that behavioral finance. It's the psychology of money, where if you know that it's being taken care of, you're not missing those dollars, right? It's going in, it's being invested, it's growing for you, but it's not affecting your day-to-day. It's not affecting your cash flow.
It might affect which truck you decide to purchase, because now you can look at the income that you've got coming in and take a look and be like, actually, maybe that truck payment is $100 a month more than I want. So I'll get one package less. I mean, maybe I don't need the sweet 13.1 Bose sound system inside the car. I can get a nice 7.1 sound system.
Exactly. And you know what? To most ears, you're not going to tell the difference. But why it's so important is in getting that not feeling that cash flow is, when you start earlier, when you start, at this level, life only gets more complex, right? Life isn't linear. You're going to start a family, maybe you're going to have kids, maybe you're going to have different financial things arise. And so it is only going to get more complex from your financial system and financial perspectives. So when you're looking at this dollar figure, I think from the psychology of it, it's a lot easier to give yourself a pay raise than a pay cut, right? When you're catching up and trying to put more in later because you realized I didn't start soon enough, you are taking pay cuts out of your day-to-day cash flow by trying to lever up the amount you're putting in, and likely a more complex financial situation. Whereas when you're young, you don't have a lot of those overhead expenses quite yet. You're not at that point. And so you can start out really aggressive. You can put in more than you need. And then as life gets more complex, you can always adjust downwards a little bit to flex with life's expenditures. But what you've done already is you've gotten really aggressive really early. You're getting that extra time in the market by putting in that dollar figure up front and allowing it to grow for you, even further.
Yeah. And starting when you're 20, if we're aiming for, say, mid 50s for a retirement, 55 we'll go with. If you start at the age of 20 with these investments, you're giving yourself 35 years worth of investing and, more importantly, compounding.
Exactly.
And if you start later at, say, 30, you're cutting that. And you're not cutting necessarily the first 10 years. You're cutting the last 10 years.
Yeah. And that last 10 years is the most important. Are you familiar with what they call it, the rule of 72?
I believe that has to do with compounding interest and how long it takes for an investment to double.
Exactly. It's a rough, mathematical formula that says in multiples of 72, that's your required rate of return for your number of years for that money to double on itself.
Okay.
So, take 10% as your rate of return, which is going to be historically average for S&P 500, or 100% stock market allocation, which is an aggressive allocation. And that's where you start at when you're younger. So with that in mind, it's every 7.2 years, you can expect your funds to double. And that's why that last 10 years is so important, is you're getting that last double, you're getting that last multiplier that is going to be the most significant of your life and of your career. It's going to be the largest double that occurs. And that can make or break the decision to retire early, or the decision to delay retirement, or the decision to, what do I want to do in retirement? What do I want my lifestyle to look like?
The difference between $1 million and $2 million.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or more, depending on how much you get invested and how early you do start. And not to mention that if we're talking at 7.2 years, that last 10 years is almost time and a half. On that.
It is. Yeah. It's crucial, right? And especially for those that, those 20-year-olds that are out there that say, I want to retire at 55. Well, getting started is what gets you there.
Yep.
Because you're taking 10 years off of your career of that earning potential. So you need to supplement that somewhere else in order to make sure that you're hitting that goal.
So maybe putting off the big purchase of a fancy new car, because it'll definitely look awesome when you're out at the bars spending your rent check to get down in this club, I believe the lyric goes, to then wait when you're 55 to actually retire until you're 65.
Yeah. And if you look back, hindsight's always 20/20. That car purchase probably wasn't as important to you at that stage of life as working 10 more years, right?
Yeah, I know for me, that was the decision point. One of the things that we did talk about just a second ago, and I think is an interesting one with the set it and forget it ideology, is you mentioned giving yourself a pay raise by maybe looking at how life changes and realizing that I need to pull back a little bit on how aggressively I'm investing. How much should we be looking at adjusting, say a 401k, because we're talking percentages at this point, over time to increase our investments or decrease those investments? Or is just a percentage of our paycheck a good enough thing, assuming that we're good employees and getting raises, and that means that percentage is going to go up along with our annual salary?
Yeah. And you touched on something that I wanted to make sure, especially for those that are younger, you always want to be contributing as that percentage. You never want to look at it as, I want to put in this as a dollar figure, because that percentage is going to grow with you. It's going to grow with your career. It's going to continue going up as you are a good employee, as you continue to get pay raises, as your career develops.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that that's growing with you. Your contribution is growing with you.
Yeah. If you start at say 4% of a $50,000 a year job, and in 10 years or however long you're making $100,000, that 4% is doubled.
It gets
over time without you ever doing anything about it.
Exactly. And so, when you're looking at how much should you put in, how little should you put in, the minimum, I would say the minimum should always be that company match.
Yeah.
Right. You never want to put in less than that company match, because again, you leave that free money on the table at that point.
And for people out there listening that maybe haven't seen this yet, company match means that for every 1 or 2% that you contribute to the 401k, your employer will contribute either a matching percentage. If you're really lucky and have a great employer, it might be a 1-to-1. You put in 3%, they put in 3%. It might be a 2-to-1. You put in 6%, they put in 3%. But that is basically a free raise.
Yeah. Yeah, and if even at that 6% and 3%, that means 9% is going into your 401k plan. And so, increasing that contribution over time, that set it and forget it mindset, it's a great way to approach it too, because you can set up automatic increases. It's taking a little bit more out of your pay, but you're not going to feel it quite as much because your pay is going to be going up at the same time. So it's going to kind of offset itself, and you're not going to feel that impact overall. So a lot of folks, they'll put in a 1% annual increase to their 401k, and they can set that up on their platform. And again, they don't feel that. Yeah. They don't feel the impact because it's automatic. It's never reaching their cash flow. from their daily cash
If
flow.
it never hits your bank account, you don't know that you have it to spend.
Exactly. It won't burn a hole in your pocket because it was never in your pocket, but it's in this other pocket. It's in your envelope over here that's full of all your retirement funds that's only going to grow for you.
So what have you found as a way for the younger audience to kind of get that urgency? Because when you look at things like a fancy new truck, that is, really cool. And when I look at age 55, 65 as retirement age, that's way out there in the future. And while I know that I'm going to thank my younger self now because I am a much older gentleman, how do you get the younger crowd to really see the benefit in that versus YOLO lifestyle? We need to go out and just live this life to the fullest and spend every dollar we make.
It kind of ties back to that, who wants to be a millionaire question, right? Is if you go to a 20-year-old and say, do you want $1 million in your account? Are they going to say no? Right? They want that dollar figure. I think for those that are younger, it's showing them, here's actually what that compounding interest looks like. Here's what that growth potential you have is. And if you defer your purchase or just go with something else, or have that ability to contribute at a rate that's going to be successful for you, that alone is a lot of that turning point. It's, using an example on that rule of 72, right? That doubling, you've got 5 periods really across that doubling that you get when you're starting your 20s versus, starting in your 30s, you might have 4 periods.
Okay.
Well, from a simple numbers standpoint, let's say we start with 25,000. Well, that 25 goes to 50,000. That 50 goes to 100. That 100 goes to 200. That 200 goes to 400. That's your 4 period doubling. You might end with 400,000. That last double, that 400 goes to 800. That's where it gets really significant. That's where, you tell the 20-year-olds, you tell the younger folks that are just starting out, this is really the impact there, because that last double could make the difference between 500,000 and $1 million, $1 million or 2 million, right? And it really just builds on itself. So, I encourage all of them, start now, start early, and start aggressive, because that's where you really see the growth potential.
I mean, maybe that's the difference between a comfortable retirement here at home where you get to stay at home and watch TV or Netflix or whatever new fancy streaming service we have at that point in time versus relaxing on a white sand beach with a Mai Tai in your hand on a regular basis.
Exactly. I like the analogy because one of the most common questions that we get as advisors is, well, how much do I need to retire? Right. And it depends on your lifestyle. It depends on your goals. It depends on when you want to retire. And I like to say, do you want to be yachting or do you want to be yurting? Because those are going to be entirely different financial goals and entirely different dollar figures to get there.
Absolutely. For people that don't know, a yurt is a fancy camping situation. Yeah. I love the reference, yachting versus yurting.
And so it's showing those younger folks, like, here's really the impact. Here's what that means. If you defer this, if you delay this, if you just don't get started, you don't have that urgency, or you don't have that desire or that discipline. This is really that impact that you're going to run into.
Yeah. That lifestyle concept, I think, matters a lot. Like, do you want a nice, quiet life hanging out on like some acreage off in Montana where you're literally just hanging out and that's like your retirement? Great. You're going to have to figure out how much acreage in Montana costs and how much that's going to take to upkeep and maintain. But that may be very different than I want an entire like decade of cruise ship life off in the distance, because that's actually a whole thing that you can look at as well.
Oh, yes.
All-inclusive resort
it's
living.
Entirely different retirement plan that a lot of folks have had a lot of success with.
Yeah. And if that's what you're interested in doing, I feel like that goal motivated situation might be the thing. Like, yeah, you want to drive this really cool car now, but what are you going to be doing when you're 65?
Exactly.
And if that is sitting around in an apartment complex that you never really managed to financially get out of, okay, I mean, good on you. If that's what you're up for, I love it. I love that for you. It's not my goal. I am white sandy beaches, Mai Tais. That's my target. Certainly.
And it's very achievable. It's a very reachable goal. for most folks that they just need that discipline. And that's where, I want to reiterate that for younger folks out there, it doesn't need to be difficult. Investment doesn't need to be sophisticated. It doesn't need to be confusing. It doesn't need to be scary. All it needs to be is disciplined, because time in the market is always going to be better than trying to time the market or trying to get in at a certain time or deferring and trying to catch up later. You're losing out on that precious growth period that is really going to set it apart. So,
and that's a theme that we've heard on the podcast so many times, is that if you bet on the market in the long term, you will come out ahead. There's a reason that almost all investment professionals talk about how the average returns on the market put you in that 6 to 10% range. It doesn't matter that we hit a big recession that was really bad for people in those last years, but it does matter that over the course of time, any portfolio recovered from those major down years. You're also going to see some major up years that you'll probably, revert from a little bit, but be really happy that you got those big gains.
Definitely. And that's why, what you mentioned on the recessionary side, that's where that disciplined investing really comes in is, should the market go down, you have to maintain that disciplined investment approach. Keep putting money in, because you're just buying in lower in the market and you have a higher growth potential. It's kind of like your investments are on sale, right? You're getting in lower, and then throughout that recovery period, which will occur in any market cycle, there's going to be a peak, there's going to be a downturn, there's going to be a bottom, and then there's going to be an upturn, right? It's kind of like a rolling hill. Yeah. And so buying in on that downside, that's where that extra growth comes from. That's where portfolio recovery comes from. That's where, for those that are younger and have that time for that to recover, they can ride out those market waves and not have to worry about the volatility, because they know it's going to recover. It'll be growing for them. They're not going to be affected by it, and they just need to maintain that disciplined investment approach.
So for the people that already missed out on the opportunity to jump in right out of the gate and really set themselves up, is there a different strategy? Like, should they start investing in, like, I don't know, root vegetables or some strange other thing that they should be looking at? Or is this a get started now, because like the longer you wait, the worse it gets?
It's a get started now, because the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Right. I will say the best time to invest is yesterday, and the second best time is today, right? It's get started today. Keep that disciplined approach, because no matter what, maybe you're in your 30s and you're starting. Well, again, you still have 4 of those doubles, right?
Yeah.
To hit. But if you delay from your 30s to your 40s, that cuts it back even further. 40s to 50s, that cuts it back even further. And really all it's doing is it's preventing you from having certain options in retirement. It's preventing that flexibility. And so if you get started today, if you get started this week, this month, just get started, right? That's the hardest part. That's where people run into that barrier. Is it's kind of an analysis paralysis type situation where there's so many investment options. Everyone's trying to sell you a course on, here's what to do. Here's how to get rich quick.
Yeah, it's root vegetables. I thought I just said
vegetables. That. Yeah, here's your course on it. But no, it's really as simple as just getting started, right? There's so much information out there on it that all you need is that disciplined investment approach, and you just got to get started.
And for anybody who was listening to our last episode, get started, but verify the people that you're working with and who you're talking to. There's a lot of social media influencers out there that have no credentials behind their name. They might actually be giving good advice. They might not be. They might be trying to sell you a cleanse or a supplement that will fix all of your health problems, or they might be giving you legitimate financial advice because they want to see other people out there succeed and thrive like we do here. Yeah. So finding a wealth advisor with, say, Petersen Hastings, or with anybody else, talking with our financial coaches here at Hapo to get started in that, and finding somebody who is really looking out for you and helping you budget. like as a young 20-year-old, I would think going and finding somebody who already knows the information can take the edge off of how scary and how weird some of those are, like who's Roth. And why am I supposed to be giving him all my money?
Exactly. It's the hardest part is starting, right? It's saying, hey, I don't quite understand this, or maybe I do need that extra help. And like you said, it's trusting someone. It's going and having that initial conversation just to get you pointed in the right direction, just so they can let you know, here's what you should do, here's how you should start, and then you can run with it from there. That's the most difficult part. And especially for those younger people, those people that are in their 20s, that's the part that they struggle with the most is, I don't have the answers, and let me go ask someone. Because it, like I said, it doesn't need to be difficult. It just needs to be disciplined.
Yeah. And honestly, it's not like once you set it at the very beginning, you're stuck with that. You can adjust. In fact, if you're working with a wealth advisor regularly, you're probably going to be checking in on how things are going, because you don't want to just let it sit there and not ever look at it. You want to know how things are going, getting a good progress report.
You want to see the growth, right? We're talking about these doubling periods. You want to see it double. You don't want to just know that it's there. You want to see it, because those numbers and those percentages of that growth, that's going to be meaningful, and it's going to show you the value of your discipline. Because seeing, you can be doing it every single day and not think about it, but it's going to be rewarding to see, okay, I've had this discipline for X amount of years, and here's my payoff. Here's what I'm seeing. And now I can run my estimates and my calculations on here's where I'm going to end up because of my discipline.
Yeah. And honestly, the other half of that is that your end goal might change. By the time you're in your 40s, maybe you've picked up a weird extra hobby and decided that like hanging out on a yacht isn't necessarily for you. Yurts are definitely more your thing. But now as you change your financial goals, you're targeting very, very fancy yurts.
Yeah. And like it's retirement and life, it's not linear, right? You could have a retirement goal and say, I want to golf every single day. Well, you could get 6 months into your retirement and say, I actually hate golf. This is so hard. I'm not having fun. I want to shift gears.
Yeah, philosophically, golf is just a good walk ruined.
Exactly. And it entirely could be for that person. And that's where, having that flexibility comes in, having the assets that are there, having that growth that's there and waiting for you. All it is doing, it's providing you that flexibility of, I can change my mind, and I can know I will be entirely okay to change my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And if your plan shifts from, say, going golfing to going scuba diving, it's going to change your venue quite a bit.
Yeah.
But you're already set up and moving in the right direction, because either of those ideas is going to take cash. And the hopeful goal is that both of those things, you're not having to go to work and fit all these things in on the weekends. That's the end goal here. Have a nest egg, as it were, that you can break into and fund the fun side of life after the fact.
Yes.
And honestly, there's a bunch of other like investment ideas. Like if you want to be saving up for a major purchase, that things like this can definitely help with.
Yeah.
Beyond just retirement investing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, looking at kind of your hierarchy of investing, I would say start with retirement assets, right? Get your 401k, 403b, employer sponsored plan, whatever it is. Take care of that. You've got a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA that you could land funds in if you want extra retirement savings. And then there's other accounts to explore outside of that, depending on your goals, whether it's education planning for children, or whether it's, health savings planning for, early retirement to supplement not having work provided medical insurance, or whether it's a brokerage account for down payments or that extra flexibility of spending. There's certainly different options and avenues, and getting that disciplined approach started, getting that investment approach going for you, especially early in your 20s, that's where it's just going to open all these different doors for you for, I now have this in my cash flow that I need to know where it should go. Do I want to put it in A, B, or C, or D? Because, it's going to align with these different goals.
Yeah, budgeting out, planning out, taking a look at all of the different tools that are available to you. If you look at your financial structure and you see a savings account and a checking account and nothing else, start talking to somebody about what other options there are out there. Because while savings and checking are perfectly acceptable accounts, you're not really earning a whole lot. You're going to be earning a little bit of interest on those things, but we're talking fractions of what you can get by actually investing in your future over the long run. If you are just rolling money up to put into a pickle jar to bury in the backyard or a coffee can, you're going to know where that money is, but it's not doing anything but sitting in the dirt at that point in time. There's a lot of options out there, accounts-wise, short-term investments, long-term investments. And again, a lot of different goals, planning for down payments on stuff, planning for yachting in your 50s, planning for scuba diving, getting that really nice truck when you can really appreciate it and not have to worry about how much money is going into insurance and car payment and filling up the gas tank.
Yeah, all the extras that come with that. Because that's the other thing that people don't realize is in my day-to-day cash flow, in my budget, if I want to go do this thing early on, well, it's going to have other budget consequences. And that's where I like to think of investments, especially for those in their 20s, early on in their careers. You're taking care of all these other things, but of whether it's employer sponsored or supplemental investment, but think of it like a bill, right? All of your extra investment, because it's all the stuff that's out of sight, out of mind, you're not worried about. That's being taken care of. It's what do I do with now I have an extra $400 a month maybe that I don't know where it should go. Well, should I spend it? You could, but you could be better off putting it somewhere and investing for your future. And that's where, think of it like a bill. I have a $250 a month bill every single month that it goes into my investments. And I know I can count on this every month. This bill isn't going to change value. It's not going to be like my utilities where if I leave the lights on for too long, it might go up. I have this dollar figure I can count on, and I am in charge of putting this away for my future.
And if you've got an extra $400, not all of it has to go into that. Save $50 of it and splurge on Starbucks.
Go have fun. You can still live a lifestyle that is enjoyable. You don't need to. And I think this is the really important thing for those younger people, that they're getting hounded on from all these different voices out there that say, you need to be doing this to a T. Well, it can be flexible. You can still enjoy your life and have these different opportunities, but know that it's important to take care of that financial future first.
Everybody's financial journey is unique to them, like a fingerprint. What one person is earning, another person is not earning. What one person wants to save for, another person doesn't want to save for. Having a template doesn't hurt to take a look at and see like, hey, here are some things that we can do with that. But having a plan specific for yourself, it'll take a lot of stress off your shoulders, especially when you really look into it and see, I'm doing all of these things to set myself up later on. And good to go. So
exactly. And it builds those healthy habits, right? And that's what carries forward throughout life. Is you build those healthy habits now. You don't have to play catch up or try and break a habit first and then build a habit later. It's starting early, developing that behavioral finance principle for yourself, and then you're not catching it later on. And if you are catching it later on, then it's breaking that habit and starting that healthy habit going forward.
Absolutely. Outside of that, do you have any advice for the younger audience listening now as far as how they can go about getting started?
Yeah, the first thing I would do, if you have access to an employer-sponsored plan, a 401k, for example, log into your 401k. You might have never checked it before. It might have been automatically going for you, or you might need to enroll in it. So check in on the 401k first, because that's going to be the easiest spot to save for the retirement. That's step one. Step two, if you don't have access, go open up a Roth IRA. Early on in your career, you can get started in that. You're not going to be above that income phase out range, likely, which if you are, then that's a great start in your career. But, go get that Roth IRA opened up and then just get an automatic deposit going in. Make sure that it's not exceeding the amount that would be over the annual limit, but just get that going, get that started, and from there, it's really, where should I put the extra funds after that? But the first thing I would do, 401k, second thing, Roth IRA, and then set up those automatic deposits.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for jumping on here today and helping us help the young professionals out there start to set themselves up stably for their financial futures and their retirement plans, whether it be yachting or yurting. And until next time, this has been Dollars and Cents, Happo Community Credit Union's Financial Literacy Podcast. See ya.